You know that one person who never posts anything. Maybe they're a friend of yours. Maybe, quietly, they're you. While everyone else is busy documenting the trip, they're just on the trip. While the rest of the table is angling a plate toward the window light, they're already eating. And it's easy to assume they're the ones missing out. But there's a real chance they've quietly worked out something the rest of us keep not quite learning. The less of your life you feel you have to prove online, the more of it actually seems to belong to you. Let me ask you two questions. When was the last time you posted something? And then, the more interesting one, when was the last time you thought about posting and didn't? That little gap, that half second of hesitation, tells you almost everything. Because somewhere between opening the camera and tapping share, something happens in your head. A fast, quiet calculation starts running. Will people like this? Does it make me look the way I want to look? Is this ordinary Tuesday of mine actually interesting enough to earn a reaction from a few hundred people, most of whom I haven't spoken to in years? There's a name for the machinery underneath that calculation, and it's older than the internet. A sociologist named Irving Goffman wrote, back in 1959, that all of us are constantly performing. That everyday life works a bit like a stage, and we're each managing the impression we make, choosing what to show and what to keep back, depending on who's watching. He called it the presentation of self. Here's the thing, though. Goffman was describing dinner parties and shop counters and job interviews. Social media didn't invent this performance. It just took that ordinary human stage and did two brutal things to it. It made the audience enormous, potentially a whole platform of strangers, and it made the performance permanent. Think about what that combination actually does. A slightly awkward moment at a party is gone by morning. A slightly awkward caption is a small, permanent exhibit sitting there, available for anyone to scroll back and quietly judge whenever they feel like it. The stage never goes dark. The audience never fully leaves. You're on, in a low-grade way, all the time. So the people who don't post are, in a very literal sense, opting out of a performance that everyone else has agreed to keep giving without ever quite deciding to. And there are far more of them than you'd think. If I asked you what share of social media users almost never post, you might guess a small slice. The actual number is startling. Researchers describe something often called the 99-1 rule. Around 90% of users are what get called lurkers, people who read and watch and scroll but rarely or never post anything themselves. About 9% engage now and then, and roughly 1% produce the overwhelming majority of everything you see. Sit with that for a second. The feed that can make you feel like everybody is out there living louder and better than you is, in reality, being written by about one person in 100. The other 99 are mostly just watching, exactly like you. That word, lurker, sounds vaguely creepy, doesn't it? Like someone crouched in the digital bushes. But that framing gets it almost perfectly backwards. Researchers who've looked at why people go quiet tend to find something pretty reasonable underneath it. Stack up the constant pressure to post, the low background fear of being judged, and the endless comparison to everyone else's highlight reel, and something in a lot of people just quietly closes the app and stops contributing. The plain translation is that, for many people, not posting isn't avoidance. It's the nervous system doing basic self-protection. Because comparison isn't a mild side effect of all this. It's closer to the main event. Everyone else is showing you their peak moments, their best angles, their good news, while you're experiencing your own life from the inside, unedited, on an average afternoon. That's not a fair comparison. It was never going to be a fair comparison. You're holding your whole messy interior up against everyone else's carefully chosen exterior, and some quiet part of you keeps quietly losing. People who don't post are simply standing further back from that machine, not because they're fragile, because they've noticed the game is rigged, and they've asked the obvious question. Why would I volunteer for a competition where everyone else controls the camera, the angle, and the story? There's a piece of psychology that explains why this actually protects something real in a person. Two researchers, Edward Deci and Richard Ryan, spent decades developing what's called self-determination theory. Their core finding is that human beings genuinely thrive on three things: autonomy, the sense that your choices are your own; competence, the feeling of being good at something; and relatedness, real connection to other people. When those are met from the inside, people flourish. Now look at what a validation-driven feed does. It quietly outsources your sense of worth to a scoreboard other people control. Your autonomy leaks out through the like button. So the person who chooses not to post is protecting their autonomy on purpose. They're saying, without making a speech about it, that their sense of themselves is not going to be set by strangers with a thumb. And here's the part that surprises people. Think of someone you actually know who rarely posts. Now picture them in person, across a table from you. Are they lonely, bitter, withering away from lack of attention? Almost never. Usually they're doing just fine. Sometimes better than fine, precisely because they're spending the attention on the meal and the conversation instead of on the documentation of the meal and the conversation. The energy that would have gone into capturing the moment stays in the moment. That turns out to matter more than we like to admit. Now, here is the trap almost nobody sees coming. You might be thinking, fine, but I don't even post. I just scroll. Surely watching is safe, except it isn't quite. Researchers have found that simply browsing, consuming, without ever contributing, still quietly cranks up social comparison. You see the promotion, the ring, the new place, and even though some rational part of you knows it's curated, knows it's the highlight and not the whole, the damage still lands. Your subconscious doesn't carefully sort real life from performed life. It just registers a running tally. They have more than me, they're doing better than me, and it does that whether you post or not. Which is why some people quietly draw a very specific line. There's a whole group who will happily watch long videos for hours, but won't touch the endless scroll of photos and short clips. They'll sit through a 3-hour deep dive without blinking, then swipe straight past every highlight reel. And it's not random. It's that a long video asks nothing performative of them. Nobody's checking whether they liked it. Nobody's wondering why they haven't posted in 3 months. They can just learn something, laugh at something, exist for a while, and log off with nothing owed. It's consumption without the tax. All of the being fed, none of the being watched. There's another quiet pattern in people who step back from all this. They tend to trade width for depth. Fewer relationships, but ones that actually run deep. They'd genuinely rather have 5 people who know what's currently happening in their life than 1,000 who tapped a heart on a photo. And this isn't just a nice sentiment. When researchers look at what actually predicts a happy life, the depth of your close relationships beats the sheer number of your connections almost every time. 10 real conversations quietly outperform 1,000 reactions. But stepping back doesn't mean checking out. This is where it gets genuinely interesting. The people who go quiet online are often the most observant people in the room. They notice the things the rest of us scroll past, the subtle change in how often someone's posting, the shift in the tone of the captions, the carefully built online story that's just a few degrees off from the person you actually know. They're not disengaged, they're watching closely, they're just doing it silently. They tend to prefer understanding to broadcasting, thinking to announcing, depth to noise. Psychologists actually split self-awareness into 2 kinds, and the distinction fits perfectly here. Public self-consciousness is the part of you preoccupied with how you're coming across. Private self-consciousness is the part turned inward, toward your own thoughts and values. People who don't post tend to live more in that second one. Instead of the reflexive question, how will this look? They're quietly asking a different one. How does this actually feel? That's not overthinking. That's closer to emotional intelligence. When you're not spending your mental budget managing a public image, you've got that budget freed up for the real thing. Reflection, honesty with yourself, building a sense of who you are that doesn't need a single outside vote to feel solid. And that is the quietly powerful thing at the center of all this. A self that exists without an audience. Choosing not to post, at its best, isn't hiding and it isn't fear. It's a kind of quiet authority over your own life. It's saying that your private experience is already valuable, that it doesn't need to be handed out and consumed by others to count. It's also noticing something most of us feel and rarely say out loud, that some experiences genuinely get worse the moment you perform them. The sunset really is a little more beautiful when you're not framing the shot. The conversation really does go deeper when you're not half composing the caption in your head. The achievement really is more fully yours when it's just yours, at least for a while. Here's the paradox nobody quite names. The very traits that make someone step back from social media, the autonomy, the self-reflection, the settled inner security, are exactly the things social media swears it will give you. Connection, community, self-expression. It promised to bring us closer. What it built instead, in a lot of corners, was a kind of performance economy, where being genuinely unfiltered became the rarest thing in the room, where going quiet started to look strange, where not posting somehow became more noticeable than posting 3 times a day. The people who opt out aren't rejecting connection, they're rejecting the terms. They're saying, I'll connect, but on my own terms, in real time, without the show. So here's what I actually want to leave you with. What if the people who barely use social media aren't the ones missing out? What if, on this particular thing, they got there first? What if choosing privacy over posts, and depth over follower counts, and actually being somewhere over performing being somewhere was never antisocial at all? What if it's just a quiet form of self-respect? Because nobody at the very end wishes they'd posted more. Plenty of people wish they'd been more present for the life that was actually in front of them. The quiet ones aren't hiding in the shadows. They're just standing in the part of the room the cameras never reach, living in the light instead of filming it. So tell me in the comments where you land on this. Are you one of the quiet ones, the 90% who mostly watch? Are you trying to post less and finding it strangely hard? Or do you think stepping back actually costs you something real and you'd argue the other side? I genuinely want to know. And this week, maybe try one small thing. The next moment that's genuinely good. The sunset, the meal, the face across the table. Leave the phone in your pocket. Don't capture it. Just be there for it. See if it feels different when it's only yours.